Hi, so you have to put your class online. I am first going to extend my heartfelt sympathy because this is the worst possible situation to be in. Having to do this on an emergency basis without thinking it through or deciding that this is really what you want to do. But hopefully some of my past years of experience with helping faculty put their classes and courses and programs online might be helpful to you. So I just wanted to give you one important little nugget of thought that might help you if you feel stuck or if you just feel like you can't get over the hump to where you need to be, and then maybe some expanded thoughts on that if it's useful. So I'm Judith Tabron, and I have done this for a very long time, and I just want to, like I said, give you some places to start. The most important thing that I can tell you, the one sort of nugget of thought that it all boils down to when you have to take a course that you've been used to teaching in a face-to-face environment, and you're used to seeing your students and they're used to seeing you on a regular scheduled basis, is, and this sounds really self-evident, but let's talk about it just for a second. I need you to think about what the students are going to do, right? And you're like, of course, I think about what the students do all the time. I mean, you're used to, I'm going to see them in class these particular days of the week, and I know how to interact with them in that environment. And now I'm not going to see them, so I'm so panicked about how can I figure out how to get to them everything that I need to tell them, or all the things that that I wanted to hear from them. You're going to want to change that sort of process to a process where you're really thinking through how do you expect the students to work through this material essentially when you're not there, right? Because that's really the problem. That's really the challenge. And it can be done, and it can be done successfully, and it can even be done successfully on an emergency basis. So just start from that thought that you're going to work through what the students are going to do. And to that point, I would suggest that we think about the path that the students are going to take through the material. Okay? Wherever they start and wherever they end up, they need to know what the mile markers and the sign markers are all along the way. And these particular places are places that are good for them to stop and think and do some homework. So for instance, this is just a potential model. If you started with them watching a 5 or 10 minute lecture from you about whatever topic you wanted them to think about, and presumably they had some reading homework, things of that nature, and then they move to reflecting on that work, what you said and what they read or did, and then they move to discussion, and we'll talk a little bit more about discussion, and interacting with each other is going to help them so much, and it's going to help you so much, because they're going to, like they do in class, they're going to work through things that they had questions about. And then maybe, this is just one option, but maybe they post research on things that they said in the discussion board or something like that. And then from there they move to a moment of synthesis where they pull that together and they write a paper, or they write a final post, or they write a report. And then maybe you finally give them a real assessment at the end of that path. That path is very repeatable. You don't have to change it, module after module or week after week. They know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen, and that certainty is going to help everybody a lot as they go forward and thinking through, how am I going to do this class? It's a bigger challenge when you've been following a different path with your work every week in the face-to-face environment, and you move them to an asynchronous environment. But you can do it. Now, just to that thought, as soon as I mention a path like this and faculty start looking at all these steps, they say, well, how can I grade all that? How can I give them any feedback? Or how can I even know that they did it? All of your modern LMSs are going to be able to tell you that they've watched the video, or maybe that they, whatever this is, right, they accessed the homework, they accessed a library link or something that you gave them. But here's a more important thought for some of the rest of this. I want to introduce to you the important thought, you guys all know this already, but this is the moment to focus on it, of credit, no credit work, right? Work does not have to be for a grade. Sometimes you just have to indicate that they did it. And then the question becomes, what are the criteria that will indicate that they have done the work successfully? Check. Sometimes it's just turning it in. Sometimes it has to be at least 100 words. Sometimes it has to be by midnight on Tuesday. Whatever the criteria are, if you spell those things out and then you give the student credit for the work, check. You've reduced your workload to something manageable. They really do have to meet those criteria. Don't get too caught up about whether you think they're doing it right or doing it wrong. Ideally, you would work through with them what good work would consist of. So maybe in a fully online course, the first week would be talking about what would constitute a useful discussion board post, for instance, or commenting on someone else's work, or a research post. A research post, right? That's a lot of thinking through what constitutes a good research post. But if you're in an emergency environment, you can just spell it out. I need to see 100 words of reading reflection on the assigned homework by 8 a.m. on Tuesday each week, and that's what I want to see. And then you just give them credit. That's okay. And maybe that's only 20% of the grade, but at least it will keep them moving forward, and it will keep you moving forward. And trust me, moving everyone forward at a reasonable pace is the main challenge of a fully online class, and it is doubly difficult when the students did not sign up for that, right? So keeping everyone moving forward, herd those cats, right? Keep them moving is going to be an enormous issue. And then noticing if someone falls by the wayside or doesn't understand. But the credit, no credit option gives you a check-in point. You know what's happening with them, right? They get it, they don't get it, they're following, they're not following. Credit, no credit is incredibly important for you thinking through how you're going to assign the work to them. And what kinds of work could you give credit, no credit assignments on? Just a couple of thoughts. You could probably think of a dozen more, but I came up with these, right? So, reading reflections, classic, right? Most of the humanities are going to be used to doing something like that. Case studies, the business school students and other medical students, everybody's used to doing something like that. Presentations. I've had a great faculty member at Hofstra who may be watching this teach me about having them do presentations on lab equipment to tell other students how the equipment worked. That was great. And research findings. I mean, this might be your great opportunity to really think through with them what constitutes what good research and what doesn't, and to have them share that research and then comment on each other's research, which could be just credit, no credit work, but it gets them towards that phase, that all-important phase where they're synthesizing what they've learned and then giving that back to you in some format that you can assess. And that's real assessment at that moment, right? It could be a paper, it could be a report, it could be a video just like this. It's not hard to make these days, and anybody who has a working phone, a smartphone, can do that. You might want to give your students options. I wouldn't give them too many options in an emergency environment, but maybe just a couple of options might be the right thing when they need some options, right? So saying, well, I want a final synthesis of this module every Friday at 8 p.m., and you can do a video for me. It has to be at least 3 minutes long. 3 minutes is a long time to talk, right? And also I need to see the citations when you turn in the video. That's certainly in lieu of a 5-page paper. So you could give them that option if you really wanted to. And I encourage you to think about how you can recycle that material back in the next week's class. Because part of keeping them all moving is them knowing that you are hearing them, paying attention to them, and them seeing each other. So for instance, if you did have people who filed a video report, taking one student's video report, putting the spotlight on it for the next week and saying, hey, let's all talk about what this student thought about blah. Let's relate that to the homework that we did for this week. That can just really pull everybody together and keep them all moving forward in a wonderful fashion. So I hope that was somewhat helpful, and I'm going to post this on LinkedIn along with some resources that have been produced obviously very quickly in the last few weeks. Some of them have been on hand because people have been planning for this kind of a catastrophe for a long time. And please, if you have questions or thoughts or improvements or suggestions, contact me. I'm very findable, certainly available on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you, and I am wishing you the best, and I am here to help in any way I can. This is a situation where we're all going to have to pull through and get through it together, so let me know if there's any way I can help. Good luck.